Well, welcome back, viewers, to another edition of Heads Up. And as you can see, we've got a pretty mug instead of two ugly mugs here. David Walsh has joined us. Hi, David. Good to see you here, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Neil. Andrew.
Yeah. It's how many years has it been since you retired?
It's nearly 3. Yeah, the time goes pretty quick.
Yeah.
No, sorry, it's actually closer to 4 actually. So because I had a period of 8 or 9 months there before I started working for Thoroughbred Racing. So so it's closer to 4.
We'll touch on that in more detail in a second. I'll just touch on last week first of all at Sydney. The goat, we had Kanane and Tafani, a couple of good winners there. Tafani just getting up in that last stride.
Absolutely, yeah. Neck and neck, stride for the last couple of hundred with Piarata, and Kiwi jockey Opie Bosson continuing his wonderful run in the autumn in Sydney, and pleased, I'm sure he made the trip over, the rush trip back really after coming home and then heading straight back, getting I think his 4th Group 1 of the autumn, and was well found by a few people. Tafane, Kanane, a staying horse of Waller's, looks like it might be getting sold though, Neil, which would be bit of a shame, but when you get offered that sort of money, it's hard to turn it down.
You're right, that was a good win by Kanane. It was a quality bet and really good odds. Quick Thinker, as we talked about, was a good lay at $2 out to $5 it got out to in running. Just touching back on that Tafani too, I see Tommy Berry hit it 9 times before the 100-metre mark, got fined $1,000 in a week. What if he'd got up to win?
Well, that's a topic we could probably ask David about. Yeah. It's so hard to, does an extra couple of strikes make the difference in a nose decision in a tight finish? I guess that'd be the question for you, David.
Well, look, it's one of those things that's really hard to answer. Like it may do, it may not. Sometimes the more whip, the worse the result. So, we see time and time again the riders that put the whip away in a close finish and they just punch them out and the horse gives a little bit more. And often when you're using the whip and you've been using it for quite a while, they're doing their best. They'll actually start curling up close to the finish. So it's a real tricky one, that. But the problem with that is, and it has been mentioned, that one day someone's going to protest because someone used a whip excessively. But the issue there is that it's not proven they did that. They haven't got time to have a hearing and prove that they use the whip excessively. So you've only got 2 minutes to lodge the protest. So it's a real funny one. Like at some time in the future, it could come into play. Like if there was a system where there was an automatic fine when it was clearly someone clearly used whip excessively, there could be grounds for protest. But from the jockey's point of view, he's not necessarily going to know the other jockey used whip excessively. He would actually have to be informed. So that sort of thing would probably then become a steward's protest. There's definitely, when you think about it, there's definitely some grounds for it, but it's a pretty complicated one.
In that Tafani case, I would say 100%. Tommy Berry got a half a length at least on Piarata when he hit it at 4 or 5 times in a row. So you could easily make a case, but as you say, the Stipes have got to really lodge the protest in time, don't they? So
yeah. But the thing is, the protests, they need them to be held and over, get a result as quick as possible, so they can move on to the next race, because it holds up all the betting. So there isn't time to have an inquiry to confirm that the jockey used the whip excessively, to then have the protest hearing. So it's a pretty complicated one.
Okay, now last week we had an interesting question that involved you, David, and the question was, who was the rider to ride a horse with a whip in both hands and win the race and then get banned the following day, wasn't it? Well, that's the same day.
Over the weekend there was a hearing was held, and they made a rule to say that you couldn't carry 2 whips. You only had to carry 1.
Yeah. What was the background leading up to that? Getting permission to use two?
Okay, well, what happened was that the horse was a horse called Comment, and I'd ridden him a few times and actually won on him probably 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
He was a pretty handy horse. It was an open sprint, and he was just one of those horses. If he got to the front too soon, he'd sort of always be looking to get out of it. He had a quick sprint, and if he got the front too early, he'd get his head up, and he could hang in or hang out depending on what was happening on the day and how he felt, and whichever hand you had the whip in. So I'd got beaten on him a start or two prior to that day, and I had the whip in my left hand, and he started hanging out. So sort of cost him. So I came up with this plan of riding with 2 whips, and which is something I did quite a lot, especially riding young ones, because it gives them a guide, and they're certainly it's a big help when you're riding babies. So I asked the steward in the Central Districts, Jeff Humphreys, if it was okay to do that, and he didn't see any reason why. So when it came to the race day, it was actually in Wellington, and Nolan Cutchin was the steward there, and for whatever reason, he didn't think it was a great idea, and the hearing was held, and it was banned overnight, virtually over weekend. So so it was a once really, but so it's certainly a great aid and a great tool to use, especially riding young horses.
But he won the race that day at Trentham?
He won the race, correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Typical David Walsh tactic with trying to get any edge you can, and well done.
Yeah.
That's what I've always thought about riding.
The idea wasn't to actually hit him with it. It was just to carry it and give him a slap on the shoulder. And if he looked like going one way, you can slap him. And if he wanted to go the other way, you can slap him on the other side, and basically just keep him straight. And so you could actually get the best out of him with, and get him to go straight. And that's what was all they'd been costing him in his previous races. So and he won. And he actually won several races after that too. He actually was a pretty handy horse. I think we won 7 or 8 races.
Yeah. Okay, and we had only 4 correct answers. That was quite tough for quite a few people. But David, you can choose actually numbers 1 to 4 for the lucky punter who wins a $20 multi-bet on tomorrow's races. Give me a number 3. Wayne. I think it's the first time he's won too. So well done, Wayne. Your multi-bet going on tomorrow. And we've got a new question for him to go.
Yep, we'll stick with the theme of our special guest today, and the question is what New Zealand racecourse did David Walsh ride his last winner in New Zealand, obviously, at? And I'll give you a bit of a clue. It was in July 2016. So which track was the last time David Walsh saluted the judge? Probably quite a apt track too, given your upbringing too, David.
Yeah, I spent many years there working. Well, I was born in Ashburton, obviously, and went to school there, and then did my apprenticeship. So I spent my first 18 and odd years there. So yeah.
There you go. If you can't get the answer after that little clue, you might as well give up. But Neil, shall we move on to just a quick preview of the Rosehill Guineas?
Yeah, it's a good race, isn't it? 3-year-olds and good sized field. And you ever ridden at Rosehill, David?
I rode probably had 10 or 12 rides there. Never actually rode a winner. It's a very long straight race. It was actually a longer straight than Renwick, which surprised most people. But I had a few winners at Renwick, which was an absolutely beautiful course to ride on. Rosehill just a little bit different, but it's the old story. You got to be on the right horse for the day.
And the Guineas, Neil, Hawkesbury Guineas moved to Rosehill, obviously with COVID-19, etc. I think Ice Bath right down the bottom, $5 favourite. Pretty open betting race.
Yeah, just might pay to wait for your betting tomorrow too, because IndyCar may be coming out. He's likely to be sold. If the money comes through beforehand, I suppose they'll late scratch him. But I quite like Dawn Passage in this. I was really impressed with its run 2 starts back, flashing home over 1,200 metres in the best sectionals of the race. And last start, it just didn't let down on that ground. So I think back on a decent track, up in distance. it's a horse that I think will get back, and good tempo seems to be in order. So he can come flashing home at about $8. It'll be less if IndyCar comes out, obviously. But what do you like?
Oh, it's pretty even for me. I tell you, there's a horse called Groundswell that had a big rap on it in the spring. Failed on Derby Day, I remember, when we were there at Flemington due to the wet track. It hasn't really got track conditions to suit, but I don't know. Have you seen what the weather's doing over there, Neil?
Oh, it's fine weather, forecast, and a good forward, maybe a good 3 by race time. But
so back on a decent surface, that might be one at a bit of value, drawn to Ace, $14. But very open race.
Yeah. You had a look, David, at all? That race?
I always have a look at the Aussie race on Saturday, but unfortunately I haven't got around to looking at them much prior to Saturdays. I normally just wait till the fields are scratching to come out and just print the form book off the computer, and everything's done for you then. So there's no race book. Can't go and buy one. So
yeah.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, we touched on you retired from race riding about 3.5-4 years ago. What's been your role since then?
Well, I had a period where I had a few health issues, and from sort of August through till about the following April, and then that all got sorted out, and then I took up the job with Thoroughbred Racing, looking after the apprentices in the South Island, and it's been great. It's been very rewarding, and get to go to obviously get to go to most of the race meetings, and help with their training, with their qualifications, and all sorts of little bits and pieces. But no, it's great to be involved.
Yeah, and I remember you saying a while ago, Cozzy was a rider to watch out for, and you were spot on. I think you wrote 6 winners or 5 winners on the Apprentice Day in New Plymouth before we went into lockdown. But what do you think of him?
Oh no, he's a very, very talented rider, and he always was. But he didn't really get many. We got very few opportunities initially, and through that first year, I think he only had 6 or 7 winners, and which was surprising to me that he wasn't getting the support that I thought he should have. And then he sort of made a couple of trips to the CD.
Yeah. Got
on rode a winner or 2, and then all of a sudden he just took off. So come August, he started travelling a lot, and I think he's up ridden 70 odd winners or something for the season. So marvellous effort, but it wasn't a surprise to me because he always showed talent. It was just a matter of opportunity, and he was sort of, when we have fitness sessions at apprentice school, and we once or twice a year we go to ARA, and they have a good thorough testing of all their heart rates and all that, and he was by far and above the fittest and most natural athlete in the group. So it certainly was no surprise, but it was just a matter of opportunity.
The South Island, it would be fair to say, has relied heavily on, shall we say, imports for in the jockeys' ranks. With the potential changes in the immigration policy with COVID-19, is that going to be a major issue attracting jockeys to the South Island? Those sort of Asian ones like Cozzy, and you've got
we've currently got about 14 apprentices at the moment, which is plenty. There's 2 or 3 of those coming out of their time in the next sort of 6 to 9 months, but everyone's going to get their apprenticeships extended for 3 months or whatever the time period of the stand down. Everyone's apprenticeships will be extended, so that's good. But the futures are rather unclear because whether, like a lot of them are considering getting residency and that, and depending on what sort of rules the immigration make in the future, it could get a little bit tricky for some of them, especially the ones that want to stay. But on the other hand, if this COVID-19 hangs around for a while, it might be hard for them to go home as well. So it's pretty unclear at the moment. But we're pretty well off with apprentices down here. The Central District is very short. They've only got 5 or 6 apprentices currently, and a couple of those are coming out of the apprenticeship, finishing their time soon. So I mean, there's a marvellous opportunity in the Central District for apprentice, but for some reason or other, they don't seem to want to go there.
That's interesting. I know when you were riding. I used to go to the races with you sometimes, and we'd walk the track, or even before the meeting, we'd go out and walk the track. And I learnt so much from just listening and watching you doing it. It was amazing. And do you do that with the riders as well, the apprentices?
The ones that are interested, I do. I still make every effort to walk the tracks even now. I don't walk them all, but probably 9 out of 10 times I do prior to the races. And it's a good way of keeping your steps up, trying to burn off a few calories. And but it's just good to have an idea of what you think is going to happen at the meeting. If any of the apprentices are keen to ask questions, I've hopefully got the answers, or certainly can assist them. So, but that's sort of something that evolved over many years. And I had a good friend, Fergus Keane, and lives in Papakura. He was a big help to me in the early days, and he used to walk the tracks, and he taught me a lot. And that's sort of something I carried on. And it does make a difference. It actually makes a huge difference. Even on days when the tracks are good, 3 people, so there's no such thing as track bias. Well, actually is. There's a lot of little factors that come into it, and such as the way the grass has been mowed and rolled. There's things you can't see, such as wind, which they talk about quite a lot in Australia, especially at Caulfield. The wind affects how the races are run, and there's factors like that make a big difference. And like where the rail was a previous meeting. Shifting the rails, that's made a huge difference, and change of patterns, and can make patterns a little bit unpredictable. And then, of course, it's all obviously tempo related as well. So there's a lot of factors to consider. But it's really good to. Well, I always felt it's great to have it in your head that what you thought was the best part of the track, and it's good to know that from the beginning, because there's no point realizing after 5 or 6 races, the best part of the track's here, and then somebody else has already won 3 or 4 races, and by knowing what to do. And so currently probably the best jockey in New Zealand for that is Lisa Allpress. She's a great one to really understand track bias and appreciate it and ride to it. And when she comes to Riccarton or whether Ashburton, whatever, or Oamaru, or wherever she'd go, because I'd give her a ride, we'd walk the track. And so she's a true believer in it, and her results say that she's sort of got a pretty good idea what she's doing.
She sure does. One day I was watching the races at, I think it was Harrow or Stratford, and I couldn't figure out why the leaders weren't winning. They weren't going hard, and I remember texting and saying, "What do you think of these races at Harrow?" And your answer was, "Just look at the flag, look at the wind." It was the wind factor. How much does that play in a race?
Oh, huge. It makes a heck of a difference, because, for example, Riccarton, we tend to get a lot of nor'easterly winds, which means it's sort of hitting the horses head on, but a little bit sideways from the inside in the run home. Yeah. So, especially down the 1,200 metre chute, if your horse is on the inside or leading, well, they're into the wind all the way. And the horses that are just sitting off them, and they could be 2 or 3 or 4 wide, and maybe with cover, but cover's not always. I think cover can be a little bit overrated, actually. But they get a suck along, and they're sort of sheltered from the wind. And then, of course, the ones that have been up there doing it into the wind all the way, they get tired pretty quick. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean they can't win, because the best horse will normally win. He'll be able to be in the wrong place and have a few negatives and still win because they're the best horse. But if it's just if they're all equal, on some days there's certain horses that just can't win before they start, and that includes a lot of hot favourites that are false favourites.
It's interesting. I know, just going back to the actual track bias itself on the track, I was at Trentham races with you one day, and you said to me a couple of races before the parliamentary, come for a walk with me, we'll sneak around the track and have a look. And I was absolutely amazed at the little things you were looking for. And I'll put a link up to it later. I'm sure you remember the race on Intransigent.
Yeah.
And we walked down the back straight, and you said there was a strip about 1.5 metres wide. Remember that?
Yeah,
With that
yeah.
race, yeah.
He didn't win though. He got beaten, but
I'll tell you why, because Daryl Bradley, I think it was not Sea Change, Sea Eagle.
yeah.
He was following you. I thought, the cunning bucket, he's
Yeah.
following David and getting that little advantage too. But
Yeah.
that strip down the back straight, and even in the commentary, I think it was George Simon commentating, said, "Oh, David Walsh is sneaking up the inside, and you made up links there and coming around the top towards the turn." I remember walking around there for, and you said, "Oh, you'd likely if you can get to that part, you were going there, and you got to the right part, and you were home for all money." And I thought, "Oh, we're in here." And bloody Daryl Bradley gets up on the line. What do you remember from that race?
Yeah, well, that was just a good example of doing your homework and just following what you thought was thought would happen. You've got to have a really open mind though, because it's like I do all the homework, and when the gates open, you actually forget what you've done. Like put it all behind you and just ride the race as it goes, but it's still in your head that this is the best part of the track, and you naturally ride it that way. But see what happened that day, what happens a lot is the inside is off, whether it was off for a start or it's off because it's chopped up after 3 or 4 races, and they start moving out. But then it's so easy to move out too wide. Once they say the inside 3 horses is chopped, so they start going 4 and 5 wide, and something comes down the middle of the track or out wide and it wins with everyone. Next thing the jockey's saying, "Oh, we've got to be 6 or 7 wide," but actually there's nothing wrong with 4 or 5 wide. And often 2 races later, there's that strip in the middle that no one's been to. So there's little things like that make such a difference, and it's just the little minor things that you do in a race that make all the difference between winning and losing. And I mean, when they're getting beaten, in these photo finishes now and get beaten by pixels, well, I mean, you've only got to hold your breath a bit different, and it might have made a difference, So it's the little things that make the difference, and that's sort of what I used to try and focus on.
I'd say one race where you did have a bit of a preconceived plan and you pulled it off to a nicety. I think it was a filly by the name of Princess Emmy at Riccarton. 1,200 metre race. You basically came down the chute out extremely wide, and then across the crossing, you ducked right down to the rail in the straight. You obviously saw that there was 2 fast lanes on that day.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting one because the track was wet at the start of that week, and I looked at it on the Monday before Noms, and I had it in my head what I thought the best part of the track was, and I looked at it actually 4 times through the week, and as it turned out, she drew the outside in this race. It was a Canterbury Vale Stakes, and so in my view, the outside down the chute was the best part of the track, but it was better over the inside and the home straight. They must have, I think they'd moved the rail back in, so there was a strip there that hadn't been used for some time. So, but as the day went on, it showed the opposite in the results of the races. There might have been 3 or 4 races that day, and all the horses that won down the chute, they were on the inside and then came out wider of the straight, and I had it in my head that was complete opposite. Well, I draw on the outside anyway, so I wasn't going to change my plan. Stuck to my guns, and it was quite amazing how she just got such an easy run down the outside and the back straight, and then when I went over near the inside, she put 5 or 6 lengths on them, and she done. To that point for the first 800, she just done no work at all, and she kicked away and went well.
Did you? I think didn't you speak to John Sargent before the race just to get the okay, if that was okay to do, or as long as he was
I can't recall it now, Neil, but I might have said something to him. But normally, if I'd say something to a trainer like that, they'd say, "Well, you do what you like, Yeah. We've got the horse. You do what you like because, I think to be honest, I think a lot of in this day and age, sometimes the trainers try to have too much input, telling the jockeys how to ride, and 9 times out of 10 it proves to be the negative. They sort of say, "Well, look, you've drawn once, you've got to go back, and you've got to do this or got to do that." But I mean, every horse has their own pattern of racing, and every race is race different. So actually, you've actually just got to jump out the gates and see what happens and ride it as you go, because if the jockey goes out with a preconceived idea to ride it exactly how the trainer says, 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work.
So you must have been pleased to see Princess Emmy drawing wide in that race. If she'd drawn the inside, do you think you still could have got to where you wanted to, or you would have tried?
Oh, well, if she'd drawn the inside, it would have been a completely different ball game. Look, she may still have won the race. Look, we just never know. But the fact was, it turned out that it worked that day, and hey, it didn't always work, but it did that time.
Yeah. And coming down from the outside of the chute down to the rail again, there's a bit of a downhill there, is there? Or
I think there's quite a big drop. Yeah, the track is very cambered around the top bend and round to the past the 600. So it's like if you anyone that has ridden a bike on a velodrome and they get out wide and they zoom down, it's the same effect. Basically same principle, I should say. And as you come off the high part going down, your horse you'll just naturally pick up speed without using any more energy. So yeah.
Throughout your career, David, you've probably been best known for your ability to rate a horse from in front and dictate terms. Do you have a clock in your head that you can kind of tell what's the appropriate speed to be going at and try and control it from there, or is it just intuition, or what would you put that down to?
It's intuition really. Like from when I first started, my original boss, Jim Lawler, he was very particular on how fast you were going, on whether it be slow work, pace work, or galloping. He'd always time me and time the horses and tell you how fast he wanted you to go. And if you didn't get close to it, well, you knew about it. And when I moved to Riccarton, there was speed was obviously everything. Like in the younger days in the races, we'll put it this way, it took a long time to learn how to do that on race day compared to track work, because track work you can go a wee bit faster or a wee bit slower if you think you're not doing it right, whereas race day there's so many other factors that don't permit that. But then I went to Riccarton and there would be, sorry, my other phone's ringing. I'll just send him a message. It's actually Noel Harris, my old mate. So I sent him a message, tell him I'll ring him back later. And then I went to Riccarton and there was 2 newspapers at Christchurch in those days. So there was reporters for the Press and reporters for the Star, and they were timing horses. So I was always keen to find out what I went. And then when I went to this Palmerston North, the same thing. There was clockers at the track, and you couldn't wait to get the newspaper in the afternoon to check to see if the times you thought you went and that you were told to go were, if that's actually what you went. And just over time, it just evolved. And particularly when I went to North Island, a lot of the trainers there had this thing about the horses going forward. They were great ones to say, "Oh, ride them back," and you could have a 12-horse field, and 10 of them were told to ride them back. Don't be up front. Well, for whatever reason, horses used to just naturally run for me, and without even asking them to, and I'd end up leading by default more times than not. So the more often that happened, the better you got at rating the speed and learning what to do and when to put the pressure on certain tracks. And after a while, it just became second nature. So, and then obviously you get this reputation of being a front-running jockey, so people wouldn't put you on horses that get back. But I'd get on a horse sometimes that Harry had ridden 5 times and ridden out the back, and I'd ride it and end up leading, So it's just how horses often react to different riders. So yeah. So basically, it was just a time thing. Over time, the more you did it, the better you got at it. And I never used to count in a race. Some people say, "Oh, you got to count how fast you're going." Well, there's no point doing that, because if you count and you've gone 600 meters 2 seconds too fast, we can't actually put the brakes on then and go slower, and vice versa. So to me, it's all about feel and allowing the horse to be comfortable in its rhythm. And like when a horse is leading, like on a good track, for example, if they're leading maybe in a 1600 meter race, they feel like they're going 15 to the furlong. They're actually not. They're going a tad better than 13, but they feel like they're doing it so easily. So if you can get them to do that for even 200 metres, but certainly 400 metres in a race, they're going to find plenty, because then they naturally pick up when you want them to go, because they just use no energy. So that's basically that was ended up how I approached it, and it's all about allowing the horse to be in its rhythm, relaxed. And I didn't care if I was a length in front or 5 in front. I often got accused of going too fast in front, but it was actually not me going too fast. It was the others weren't keeping up with me. They were going. So if the horse that's running second, the rider isn't keeping you within 2 or 3 lengths, well, he's actually dragging the rest of the field back, and that actually happened. That happened a lot. So
it was a classic example of that in that lead-up race to the New Zealand Cup a few years ago. That led in, you were out some lengths or something.
Horse in Randy Brown's Kaloo, I think his name was.
Yeah.
He was a great big horse, big strider, liked to lead, and he ended up. He was a half a furlong in front at one point. I didn't know that. I didn't know whether it was 2 lengths in front or 5 or whatever. I never looked round, and it was. For watching the replay, it was actually a bit of. I never realised, because when we're pulling up, Winnie Colgan comes past me. He says, "Walsh," he says, "how do you do that shit?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. But when I saw the replay, then I realised what he meant. So.
I remember you asking me to do the sectionals on that, and you weren't going fast. You were just going normal sectionals.
Exactly.
They fell asleep behind you.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't keeping up with the speed. So,
good old days. Before that race where you ran second on Intransigent in the Parliamentary, you remember which race you won before that?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, it was the Kiwi Fruit Cup on him, and you drew the outside, and immediately you dropped back and got near the fence. And just talk us through. You won the race. Just remember how that race went.
Yeah, well, he had a love affair with Tauranga, that horse. He won that race 3 times.
Yeah.
3 different riders. It's a good example, Tauranga, how if you can handle the inside, especially in a staying race, you're better off to stay on the inside, because there's a lot of turns. It's a sharp bend going over the straight. It turns to the 1400, and then the top bend is a big bend as well. So if you're covering ground, you've covered a lot of territory. So you often see them start taking off wide during a staying race and actually run out of speed. And on the odd occasion, it doesn't happen all the time at Tauranga, the inside is the best place in a staying race. And that particular occasion, it worked out well. Everything, I just stayed on the inside. The horse in front of me pulled out, made up a length. The next one pulled out, made up another length, got the run up when I wanted it. And it worked out well. He was a funny little horse in Intransigent, had lots of ability, and probably, to be fair to say, he didn't always turn it on for whatever reason. But I know one year there, the following year I think it was, he hadn't been going that well, so I turned down the ride to go up and ride him in that race, and he ended up winning it again. He just, I don't know what it was, he got Tauranga, he just loved it, and he loved going that way around. And he won a race at Ellerslie one day as well. So yeah, he was a good little horse trained by Kirsty Lawrence at Waipakarau.
Did you ride him when he won the Taumarunui Cup?
Yes. Yeah.
Neil remembers that day pretty well.
Yeah. I do. That was a good day. Actually, that was the next race I was going to mention, that race. When you drew wide again, and you were 4 or 5 lengths last at one stage. Just talk us through that race. I've got a question afterwards.
Yeah. Well, he was a horse that could do that. He had a bad habit of missing the jump at times. And but it was a horse that had a really good sprint as well. So like even when he was back there, you never have to worry about it, because you knew when he was ready to go, he'd pick up. And quite sometimes in those races they actually go too fast. So I mean that's another example of actually rating the pace at last, sitting last. And if you think they're going too fast, there's no point pushing your horse to hunt them up to catch up, because they're going too fast. They're going to come back to you sooner or later, and normally from 800 metres they do. So, but he was, actually that day, I think the inside of the middle, actually, I thought was a better part of the track. But for whatever reason, we ended up out wide in the straight, and he did have a tendency to run around a bit at times, and he probably ran a bit wider. But no, it was a good win, and he thoroughly deserved that.
On that Te Rapa track, I've often heard riders and trainers say that crown part of the Te Rapa track is the best place to be, especially when it's sort of slow to heavy. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the track's a little bit cambered. If you're on the inside, as you run up towards a winning post, because it's a bit of an uphill bit there, so it actually not unlike Waipakarau, actually. Mm. It's actually higher. It's steeper on the inside than is wider out, and but Te Rapa can be a very track biased track at times. Sometimes when the rail's true and they've put it back to the fence. I mean, if you get off the rail, you can't possibly win. On another day, the inside's no good at all. So it just depends. I mean, every day is different. Every race is different, and you've got to. Well, one thing I did learn was that no matter what you think, you can be wrong, and you've got to be prepared to change your mind. And your first instincts normally your best, because in a race you don't have time to decide what you're going to do. Yeah. You've got to make a instant decision, and whether you pull left rein or the right rein, or you wait or you go. It's instinctive, and you haven't got time to think about it, because if you sit there for a second or two and think about it, well, the opportunity's gone.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Now, in that race, there was a horse ridden by, see if you remember, on Magna Carta. The rider thought he'd won the race after the post.
Mark Hills? Was it Mark Hills?
Yeah, it was too. Yeah. George Simon said Mark Hills is saluting as though he'd won the race, and he couldn't quite tell normal speed, but slowing it down, you can see you got up. So
it's pretty. If you're on the inside there at Waikato, it's pretty deceptive. It's hard to know with that horse out wide if it's past you or not. Yeah. Normally they have. If they're finishing better, they'll normally get up. Yeah. But from the rider's point of view, it's very hard to tell.
Yeah, that's good. Rightio. I've got a few questions here from subscribers. One of them is trial form. What do you think of trial form leading into races? Most of them have quiet runs, but any thoughts on how trial form can affect punting?
Oh, I think it's you've got to be careful how you assess it. I mean, some trial form is really good and some trial form is terrible. Like some of the worst trial form are horses that win, and it's the ones that are cuddled up and given nice, quiet, educational runs that actually benefit more. The ones I don't like seeing horses winning trials by big margins ridden out. You've got to really be careful on what weights they carried. So you've got to look at who rode them, make a guess at what's the weight they carried. Like I actually think there's a good case to say that they should be weighed, after the trials, to say, so the punters know what weight they carry, because you'd be astonished how much weight some of those horses carry by, some of the heavier riders during the week. I mean, they, jockey riders that could struggle to ride 56 or 7. Well, on a Tuesday, they could be 60 kilos, could be more with their riding boots and all the gear on. By the time you had a big saddle on and all the bits, they could be carrying closer to 70. Well, if that horse runs 34th and he's just travelling nice and comfortable, and you've got one that scorched away and had a 48 kilo rider on, and won by 3 minutes, everyone thinks, oh, that trial really good. Well, I know which one I'd rather be riding at the races, So I think it's a really good case to say that they should weigh the riders at the trials.
Information punters can use to have a bet, so why not have it?
Well, I mean, the more information they get, the better, and that's the sort of thing would help punters if they knew even approximately what they were carrying, because you'd be staggered at what weight some of them do carry.
What about connections who want to win the race to sell the horse, so that you see a horse ridden out with the whip in the trial? Is that much of a factor, selling horses after they win?
Oh, it is. It certainly is in the north, Cambridge and those sort of places. There's a lot of horses that, if they win a trial, they could be up for sale. But, as I said before, I don't think it's beneficial to see horses ridden with a whip at the trials. I mean, if you were looking to buy a horse and it had a lightweight rider on with the whip out, well, I wouldn't be very keen on buying it, because, I mean, You know, I would have thought there was 2 big negatives there, not positives. So, but it depends on the purchaser. You know, there could be rules to say they have to run a trial before they can get board or whatever. So, yeah. But you've got to do your homework on that.
Yeah. Thanks to a question from Rodney. Race fitness factor. How much do you feel race fitness comes into giving a horse an advantage in a race?
Huge. Especially in wet ground, but still makes a big difference in dry ground. Yeah, it's underrated. I believe most horses well, not most, but a reasonable percentage of horses that go the races actually need a run, the shorter a run. And we hear especially Australian commentators talk about a lot. Oh, they're backing up. You know, will they go any good today? And 9 times out of 10, they come out and race better than they did the time before. So most horses, if they run within 7 days, they will normally go better.
Right. Second up syndrome. Do you believe in the second up syndrome?
No. I think it's an excuse that's widely used, but I mean, normally if a horse has had a proper preparation and you know, and it's fit when it has its first run, it will improve. You know, so you know, some people would disagree with me, and then there could be cases where horses have gone 40 second up, but there might have been other factors such as, you know, they're in the wrong part of the track, or they might have been recovering from an injury, or have an onset of a virus or something. There could be a lot of other factors into that, but I don't really believe in second up because horses should really improve.
Gear changes. Do you feel blinkers should be worn by more horses? Right.
Well, I think blinkers are still the biggest gear change that can make the biggest difference, especially when they're applied the first time. It'd be good to see, you know, we have these things that say the gear goes on, but it'd be good to see how many times they've been on and off. It would be, you know, be helpful to punters. You know, pacifiers and there's lots of other different types of gear changes that can make a difference, but I don't think any of them make as big a difference as blinkers on do.
Does it suit? What are the negatives with blinkers? I've often hear them, they can be slow at barriers because of blinkers going on. Is that a common thing, or just? They
can be first time sometimes. Yeah, you do see that quite a lot. So you can have a fast beginner that has blinkers the first time and they might miss it. So yeah, that is, you know, that's something to factor in, but you don't know what's going to happen until it happens.
That's right. And tongue ties.
Yeah, it's a big thing. That can make quite a difference to some horses. It's interesting in England in that they don't worry about horses getting tongues a bit. You often see pictures of them having tongues flapping out the side, and it's just not worried about it at all. It's a really big thing in the trotting game, tongue ties, and not so much in the galloping, but there are a reasonable number of tongue ties used, and more particularly for horses that have had maybe breathing issues, but others that may get the tongue over the bit. So.
And you got any other questions? I've got 2 or 3 more. So.
Yeah, I've got one. What made Noel Eels such a good trainer? Off the top of my head, I've just written down. Well, actually, I'll add a 4th name to the list. Horses like Calm Harbour, Fun on the Run, Commissioner, Tall Poppy, all horses you had a good association with.
Yeah.
Why was he such a master trainer?
Well, he was a horse lover for a start, and he was very hands-on. One of those trainers, he'd make the feeds, and you know he'd go down, and if it was 16 degrees and they had one cover on, the sun came out and went at 20, you go and change your covers, or get the staff to change your covers. And if it clouded up and dropped to 12, they'd be out changing covers again. You know, he was very fastidious like that. You know, he'd go down at night and check all his horses at 7:30 and see if they'd eaten up, and you know, he was just a real old school trainer, and but he was a horse lover. Yeah. certainly a great trainer to ride for, because once he decided that you suited a horse, you're on it. You had to do something really bad to get the drag, that's for sure.
We saw an interview in the last week or so with Chris Waller on Boys Get Paid, and I think similar, just knowing and really understanding that animal and knowing basically by their behaviour what they're thinking and feeling, and is the key to be aware of getting the best out of the animal. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And he never had a big team of horses. I suppose he might have had 30 at some point, but it'd be pretty rare. But if he had 30 horses, he had probably 15 open class ones. It was quite amazing. Yeah.
You would have seen the recent release about the 1,000 and 2,000 guineas maybe and probably being moved up north because of various reasons. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is really unfortunate for the South Island. But it's understandable at this stage that they're putting those, plans in place. I'm not sure if it's 100% confirmed yet, but I guess they've got to look at it and have a process in place in case it has to be done. As I said, it is understandable because most of the horses come from up that area and travelling, and like we don't know what the future holds in the next few months as far as who can travel and who can't. So it makes sense to have that plan in place. But it's a shame if, hopefully it's only if it happens this year, it'll only be for once, and it'll come back here for reckoning next year.
Now, I've seen the first month. Have you seen the program for the first month of racing?
Oh, look, I've only had a quick browse at Neil. I haven't really had an opportunity yet, but yeah. I guess everyone's guessing about what's going to happen.
Yeah. I said there's Saturday meetings and Friday meetings at Riccarton Park, and it's going to be on heavy tracks. Just a quick thought on what punters should be looking for there at that time of year, for any bias or anything they should be aware of that track that time of year?
Well, there shouldn't be any bias. Like, the tracks might have been used for a long time, so the bias shouldn't be an issue. It's, I guess you'll have to try and work out what horses have been turned out for a period of time and what ones haven't, because there's been a lot of horses that have been turned out around the country, but there's been some trainers that got their own properties have been able to keep horses in work. So that'll be a big factor when we get back to racing.
ZTO or the TAB get comments from trainers, lots of information from trainers, because punters will be guessing, won't they?
Well, yeah, they will be. So, yeah, hopefully there's as much information gets out there as possible.
Okay. I got one more question, but out of left field. What did you and Ross Elliott say to each other after the Cox Plate finished? Did you knew you'd held on the line as you're pulling up? Were any words exchanged?
Yeah, they were. I thought on the line, I thought I'd won, and then as we made a next stride or two, there's always that little thing in your head. Oh, did we win? And I turned around to Ross and says, "Did I win?" And he said, "Yeah, you got me." Yeah. So. And
the horse Ross Elliott was riding was
Rough Habit.
Rough Habit, that great horse. And I remember seeing that race, and crikey, if the whip rule was in place that year, you would have been fined a few $1,000s.
Yeah, well, yeah. Hey, it's really interesting to go back on the old films, and especially go back to the early 90s and 80s, and you see how much whip was used. And to be honest, looking at how the jockeys ride now and how they rode then, I think it's a much better spectacle now.
Yeah,
I think we've definitely gone the right way. The future could make things change even more, but I think the racing definitely looks a lot better with less whip.
Bobby Vance and Tiaki Nick in the Melbourne Cup. That's a case in point. I don't think he missed it every stride down the Flemington Straight.
Yeah. But in those days, the more you use the whip, the more it was considered that you rode well, and a lot of trainers expect you to do that.
Could you see the day where we come and riders in our country won't be allowed to use the whip or just use it for safety reasons?
Oh, look, that's always a possibility. I hope it doesn't ever come to that, because there's no doubt there's a lot of horses that do need a bit of a good stern reminder, because a lot of them are pretty naturally lazy. But I think from a safety point of view, a whip is necessary to carry, because the horses respect it. They know it's there, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, now some of your hobbies are like salmon fishing. I know you're into that quite a bit. You're still getting out for that, or hope to get out for that when your lockdown comes off, or?
Yeah, well, there'll be a few days left of the salmon fishing season till the end of April. So hopefully we can get out next week and have a bit of a look around. Hopefully the rivers they've been at the Waimaka area especially has been a bit dirty, but it's coming down. So hopefully by next week it should be fine. So no, it'd be good to get out for a few days. And this time of year, if you like today, it's beautiful outside. The sun's out. It was fresh in the morning. The sun's out, and it's nothing better than being out by the river trying to, casting a line. I might even try and have a game of golf, Neil.
I'll have to come down. I've got the clubs there. I'll be getting out for a game, so I'll definitely come down for a game one day.
Yeah, I'll be pretty rusty, so you'll have to give me a 36 handicap. I haven't played for over 4 years, so.
You're breaking up. Any other questions, Scope, for David before we sign off?
Actually, that was going to be my next question, how his golf was going. But yeah, fresh up after a break, you might be good fresh up, and even better second up then. You never know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The second up syndrome could come into effect there.
Only an excuse.
I remember I got bitten once, and I'll never be bitten again. I played Michael Pittman in a game of golf once, and he cleaned me up big time for a good stake. So
yeah,
you would have played a few times, wouldn't you?
Yeah, he's pretty talented golfer, Michael. Yeah.
What's the one thing that you enjoy most about your current role in mentoring these apprentices?
Oh, it's just to see the improvement they make, follow them through, and it's not an easy game. It's hard. There's a lot of pressure on them, and most of them, as you know, are overseas, and from overseas and away from their families. So it's great to see them improve and get confidence, and then they start riding winners, and success breeds success, doesn't it? So that's probably the biggest thing. But I like their travelling around, going to races, and being part of the scene and seeing the people. It's good.
I think it's great that they've still involved you in racing, especially for those apprentices, because without young riders coming through the ranks, it's just doesn't bear thinking about, does it? If riders didn't come through their ranks.
Well, if you look at go through the list of the senior riders, a lot of them are getting on a bit in age, and they're not going to be around forever, are they? So, I mean, we need these younger people coming through. Yep. And, and if we, there's quite a recruitment going on now, trying to source more riders. And it's unfortunately, it's hard to get boys interested now. Girls are really keen, and without the girls, racing would really come to a halt. But on the other hand, if you go and have a look at the average 15, 16-year-old boy, he'd be 6 foot tall. So, that is an issue. So, and that's why we're actually lucky we've got all these overseas apprentices that come along. They can't get a go in their own countries, and they come here, and they're making a go of it, and hopefully they succeed as well as they can.
Do you think the weights? So obviously, just before the lockdown, the weights were raised. Or do you think with the human race as a whole, like you touched on, is getting bigger? Is it appropriate to continue to review that minimum weight type of thing to allow more jockeys to be or keep their careers going? Or do you think it comes a time where you just have to say, well, you can't expect the horse to carry that much weight because it's doing damage to the horse?
I think that there comes a point where you can't just keep putting the weights up, because we've seen over at times that when that has happened, actually the jockeys actually tend to just get heavier. If the minimum weight goes up, if it went from 52 to 53, well, a few weeks or months later they're struggling to ride the 53 as much as they were the 52, and it just keeps going. So I think that it was a very common sense approach to put the weights up by 2 kilos when this COVID-19 sort of came along. I can only presume it will get, when we're all sort of back to normal, that'll get reversed, and the weights will go back to where they were. But I guess it depends on which way you look at it. And I guess that's where the girls have got the advantage, that the girls that are involved, most of them pretty naturally light. So, hence the ones that are determined and stick at it, they do extremely well. Yeah, one thing's for sure, the male jockey is becoming a slightly endangered species at the moment. So you know, there's times you go to the races and there can be more girl jockeys than boys. You know, and I used to joke that years ago, when the girls get put in the boys' room, the boys go in the girls' room, I'll have to retire. Well, actually, it happened recently at Otaki. So. Also, a few months ago, actually, exactly that did happen. There was not enough room in the girls' jockeys' room, so they had to swap.
And I remember you saying a while ago that apprentices down south weren't getting as many opportunities as they were in the North Island. Even worse now, so pretty important.
Yeah, things have sort of, you know, they are getting, things have changed a bit in the last few years, and they are getting good rides now. And you know, with apprentices that move from 4 to 3 and then 3 to 2 kilos, well, the trainers, they tend to, obviously they're looking for the best advantage, so they'll tend to look at the next 3 kilo rider or 4 kilo rider that's showing some promise. So if they've got some ability and they want to, you know, promote themselves and do the job right, there's the opportunities out there for sure.
Saying to me, you said to me a few years ago, the worst or the most disadvantaged place for an apprentice who's claiming 3 or 4 kgs when you were riding against them was when he or she was out in front rather than behind you. Remember saying that at all? It just because in front of you, they don't have to judge when to get going, etc. Is that the reason for that, or just because they're out in front of a lightweight?
Yeah. When they've got the big claims, I think they're better to be forward, using that weight advantage. I mean, you don't put it this way, you don't see many apprentices coming from well back and winning with the claims. It's normally they're up front on free going horses, and then they are hard to catch because they've got 3 kilos or 4 kilo allowance. So especially if the horse has got any ability. I think they are better to be up there, and naturally those apprentices with that less experience are better to be up handier anyway, and on horses that can race handier, because once they get back in the field, they naturally will tend to get a bit lost. It's harder to ride a race and understand what you should be doing. So, I think they're better to certainly be up there as a help.
That's a good point of the punters there.
Yeah.
Anything else, Scott, you want to ask David before we sign off?
No, thanks very much for your time, David. Been very insightful, and hopefully the viewers have got something out of it, and really appreciate it.
Yep, no, pleasure, guys. So happy punting tomorrow, and hopefully we get back to normal as soon as possible, and roll around the spring racing.
Yeah, true. I'll look forward to coming down to a few dollars on the golf course off too.
Yeah, let me know. I'll get a bit of training in there.
Okay, thanks very much.
You don't want any second up syndrome excuses. So.
No excuse.